What are the specifics that we know about this case as it relates to Microsoft and Phosphorus?
Microsoft told us that in August and September, a group of Iranian government-backed hackers tried to infiltrate hundreds of accounts. Of those, 4 were successfully penetrated, but that did not include the one presidential campaign that they noted was targeted by the Iranian government-linked hackers.
And John, when you take a look at this specific hack, what does it tell you? That cybersecurity clearly is the next frontier as it comes to meddling in U.S. elections?
Well, campaigns are undoubtedly on the front lines of national security. There's a place where policy begins. The Iranians right now are trying to figure out what the future of American policy as it pertains to them is, and campaigns are a good place to look.
Alyza, talk to me about the specific tactics used in this case.
According to Microsoft, they used fairly rudimentary tactics. However, they were very much after personal information, which shows, according to Microsoft, a willingness to be very persistent and engage persistently as they seek to hack these kinds of accounts. This suggests that perhaps 2020 can look more like 2016, when Russia managed to do cyber operations against members in the U.S.
John, do you agree that these are rudimentary attacks, but it's the persistence that makes you so concerned that it could look similar to the way the 2016 meddling looked?
Well, campaigns have always been targets for cyber espionage. Not just the Iranians, the Russians, obviously, and the North Koreans have done this as well. The real question is whether or not they're going to carry out the hack and leak, the more aggressive operations that we saw in 2016, which are really the more disconcerting.
Well, and John, do you see that?
Well, we haven't really seen that yet. Like I said earlier, the Iranians are trying to answer serious questions about how the U.S. is posturing ourselves in the Gulf. They have a very uncertain future with regards to sanctions, with regards to the nuclear agreement. And their first use of this kind of capability is just going to be to answer questions. So it's very possible that they could target these people quietly just to gather information.
And John, are you able to say if you have been tracking Phosphorus or if this is one group that you've been following that you've known could be a potential threat?
Oh, we've been tracking Phosphorus, who we call APT-35, for about 5 years now. We first found them targeting defense industrial base in the United States, as well as Iran hawks, people who are in John Bolton's circle, for instance, pro-Israel lobby, and a few other targets, carrying out a really elaborate social engineering scheme through social media. They have a lot of different capabilities, and even though sometimes their attacks may seem rudimentary, they make up for it with a lot of gumption.
Alyza, what do your experts tell you? As you've been reporting on the story, it's been rudimentary skills, but it's been gumption. Do your experts all agree that this is sort of the next frontier as we approach 2020?
As we approach 2020, we've heard a variety of warnings from the government and the intelligence community saying that nation states ranging from Russia to China to Iran will return with new tactics. Some have said that Russia, China, and Iran are already trying to influence the information space, which is, of course, the other side of this equation. But all signs point to a major concern within the U.S. government and within the campaigns that cybersecurity is a clear issue and could be used to attack the 2020 election. So there's a lot of emphasis on preparing for this threat and trying to make sure that 2020 does not look like 2016 did.
John, as you sit back and take a whole look at the election cycle, do you see this criminal activity start to heat up in the summer? Does it start now and get hot until the election 2020? What does that cycle look like?
It can start. It can begin as early as now. I think these actors are probably already looking to gain access where possible, even if we don't necessarily know what campaigns will shake out in the end. As we get closer, though, we're likely to see if we are going to see these more aggressive hacking link operations, they're going to come much later in the game, where it'll be much harder for us to react to them.
And John, you've mentioned a few culprits: Iran, Russia, North Korea. Who are some of the big players that you have your eye on?
Well, Iran, North Korea, and Russia are definitely big players. In addition to sort of the hacking activity, we are watching the information operations space, the trolling on social networks. It's not just Russia anymore. Iran and China are also doing it as well. All four countries are very aggressive and familiar with this capability and could be players.
John, is there anything that consumers can do on our end, or someone who's in the presidential campaign to do? What are we supposed to do besides rely on cybersecurity software?
Well, there are some extra steps you can take. Probably the best one would be to use two-factor technology, not just relying on a single password. Passwords can be very difficult to memorize, and that leads to a lot of security failures. A password manager can help out. If you don't expect to have some sort of physical threat, writing the password down might actually be safer than trying to memorize or use the same password again and again. So there are some very clear steps that we could take.